This is 2020's The Last Thing He Wanted. Warning, spoilers ahead. The story starts in El Salvador in 1982 during the events of the Salvadorian Civil War, and Elena finds herself hiking trails with local militia and a camerawoman, Alma. After a while, they come across a village where the local residents have been taken out into the streets and left as a warning, and Elena starts taking notes on what she's witnessed. After a plane flies overhead, the militia leaves Elena and Alma to go on their way, and eventually they're picked up by a local man in his truck. After getting back to the city, the two of them file their article with the newspaper, and they send it back home to the Atlantic Post in Washington, D.C. Suddenly, soldiers storm the newspaper office, and Alma and Elena rush to the airport to escape. Jump ahead 2 years, and the two of them are listening to boring trade conferences in Washington, D.C. That's definitely a shift in lifestyle and environment. When Elena gets her time to question the secretary, she puts him on the spot about questioning the government's work in Central America, but Treat Morrison warns the secretary not to comment on the matter. After the conference, the secretary admits that he knows the dirty operations they're running in Nicaragua, and Treat thinks that they need to come up with a narrative. At home, Elena talks to Kat about her parents' funeral, and we see that Kat is calling her from her boarding school. The two of them have a close relationship even though they don't get much time together. Later, Elena goes into the office, and her editor lets her know that officials from Washington aren't letting them back into Central America, and she is furious. She has a point, though. If she's exposing all of these government operations from Washington, D.C., imagine what she could find if they let her back in there. Elena is furious about being moved to the campaign trail, but her attention gets pulled when she finds out that her dad wants to meet for dinner. Dick is definitely an appropriate name for this man, as Elena goes over all of his shortcomings, but his demeanor changes when he finds out that Elena's mother died. The next day, Elena hops on the campaign trail, and she flies to Kansas City to report on Reagan's rallies, and it just goes on and on as they travel the country. She went from dodging bullets to following bureaucrats. I think we know which work environment she prefers in the long run. One night, Elena is invited to the same dinner event that the secretary is attending, and the guest of honor sets her up with a meeting. The secretary is anything but compliant, and after finding out about this, Treat looks up Elena's resume. He's definitely impressed with her accomplishments, and he tries to convince the secretary that they can use her to justify their military presence in Central America. That evening, Elena goes to her hotel room and she finds a folder with pictures of her father in her bed with a warning that she's getting too close to something. The next night, Elena meets with her military informant, Gus, and he tells her that the pictures are arms deal operations and she's barking up the right tree with Central America. After getting chewed out by her editor at the office, Elena gets a call about her father, and she walks off the campaign trail to check on her father. Elena just can't catch a break! Work is in shambles, her dream story is nowhere within reach, and now her Houdini father is roping her into finishing his business deal. This might work out to her advantage, though. Elena goes to Dick's house to clean up and help him out, and she comes across a box of childhood pictures that he kept. Then she finds a paper with Dick's business deal, and she believes that she can follow a paper trail to connect a few different ventures. She questions him on what she can expect, and after finding out that he owes people for fronting him the money for the deal, she decides to go through with his deal for him. Elena meets with Barry, who gives her the rundown on what she has to do, but Elena is tired of being run around for a bad deal. She gives Barry a piece of her mind, and that night, she hears someone pulling up to the house. She grabs her weapon and waits for them to come inside, but it's just her dad. She almost ended up taking him out over a drink, but he couldn't seem too bothered by it. He's still talking business, but he'll only do so if he's got his drink. Priorities. Dick tells her that she has to meet with his client tomorrow and collect the merchandise, and even though she's pretty much had it with the games, she agrees to help him. Then he starts wondering why her mother doesn't call him at all, and she realizes that his mind is having some issues. The next night, Elena hops on a plane with the goods and flies down to meet the buyer, but there's an issue with the payment. After realizing that she's been shorted, she meets with Jones, who takes her to a complex, and she decides to take some pictures while she waits. After getting some good shots of the installation and the soldiers, she gets back in the car with Jones, and after a little accident in the car, she's able to get a hold of his weapon and steals his car. I know she's just a foreign correspondent and awesome journalist, but is taking a crime boss's car and weapon really the smartest idea in a hostile area? She finally realizes that she's in Costa Rica, but does she have any contacts in the area to help her? It feels like she's just driving into the heart of Jones's people. After getting to town, Elena ditches the car and buys a change of clothes before going to call Alma. After exchanging some information, Elena realizes that this is much deeper than she thought, and she finds out that she has to watch out for another man, Bob Weir. Elena goes to get a hotel, but once she's there, she starts getting paranoid about people coming for her. Suddenly, Barry calls her, and Elena is scared of how he found out where she is. She threatens to call ATF on him, and he tells her to fix her situation as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Alma meets with Treat to get some info on San Jose, but he gives her a good runaround. I don't know what keeps Elena going at this point. She's running off of nicotine and adrenaline since she's not eating or sleeping for what feels like 2 or 3 days. In the morning, someone slides a plane ticket under her hotel door, and she takes a taxi to the airport. Once in line, Elena realizes that someone has set her up with a completely new identity, and she just barely manages to get past security. Back home, Alma goes to check in on Dick, and she finds out that he's had an emergency and was supposedly taken to a nearby hospital. Then, in Washington, D.C., the secretary goes over Treat's background, and he believes that Treat could go places if he goes about things properly. The two of them plan to use one of the representatives to accomplish their goals by letting him get his hands dirty. As for Elena, at least she can blend in at her new hotel, but she still can't seem to catch a break as she finds her dad's obituary in the newspaper. How did she get a local Florida newspaper in the Caribbean, though? Elena tries to go into the embassy to go home, but they aren't letting her on the grounds because of the 4th of July celebration. So she goes back to the hotel to finally eat, and she ends up finding Treat there. They sit on the beach talking about what Elena is really doing there, and she opens up about how her life is spiraling out of control. Naturally, these two lonely souls sleep together, and all is well. That's how the world works, apparently. Treat tells Elena that they're leaving tomorrow, and in the morning, Elena sits by the pool waiting for her way out. What she doesn't know is that Jones is making his way to her, but he's actually there to help her as other undercover men open fire on her location. They get away in his car, but soon, more men follow them through a parade. After hiding in a parking area, Jones lets Elena know what sort of trouble she's in and why they originally chose her father for this deal. Jones can't believe that she's still in the country, but she explains that this story is all that she has left. Jones tells her that she can hide here for 1 or 2 days, and he'll be back after seeing about getting them a boat. At this point, who can you trust? I think a safe assumption would be to say no one is trustworthy. Least of all, Treat. Jones seems genuine. For now. Elena calls Alma to set up a safe space for Kat, and Alma tells her that she has a way to get her out of the country. Suddenly, Elena starts piecing more pieces together, and she thinks that Jones is in on her attacks. She rushes out of his supposed safe place, and she finds another hotel to hole up in for a moment. She calls Kat to let her know her father will be getting her, and she apologizes for everything that's happening and tells her how much she loves her. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and Treat is there to tell her he set up a location for her to wait for a way out. There, she meets Paul, who gives her a job in exchange for shelter. Watching Elena hang out with Paul kinda makes you forget that she's on the run for her life still. He's just reminiscing on his good old days, and Elena is smiling for probably the first time in the entire movie. Elena finds out that Bob set Paul up with this location, and things get serious again. The following days, Elena starts doing her duties during the day and tries to piece things together at night in her journal. While Paul is visiting with a boy, he lets Elena's real name slip out, and she decides to do some snooping in the office. Sure enough, she finds a state office card in his desk for the representative, and she starts questioning Paul's standpoint. One night, Bob pays Paul a visit, and Elena starts to remember that Bob has been around her whole life. She runs to Treat's hotel room, and she tells him that Bob is there. Why is she running to Treat? Treat set her up at Paul's place, so wouldn't he know about Bob in the first place? Stop trusting people! Treat gives Elena directions on her extraction, and he tells her that she has to go back to Paul's to get the notes and film that she stashed in her room. Elena is cautious when she goes to Paul's, and she finds that her room has been trashed. She finds the package that she stashed, but then she hears Jones's footsteps coming up the steps. She goes to check in on Paul, but he's already dead in his office. She hides in the office closet, and someone fires at Jones from the beach. After Elena thinks that things are safe, she comes out of the closet and she finds that her package has been taken. That night, Elena waits for Treat, but when he shows up, he fires at her, hitting her in the chest. Later, Treat tells his side of the story in Washington, D.C., and he plays it up like Elena was the bad guy all along. But Jones was really the one to trust after all. He was French intelligence, and he got away with her package of notes and film. On top of that, poor Kat has been waiting for her mother's call, but that'll never come. Elena managed to survive everything until Treat, and that's just sad. Then the credits roll. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.